My son hasn't called me mom in 2 years.
He still calls me.
Sometimes. On holidays. On my birthday. If he needs to ask about a recipe. But when he speaks, he says my name now. Marit. Margaret. The first time he said it, I thought he was joking. I even laughed softly. But he didn't laugh back. He just kept talking, as if nothing had changed. And that was the moment I knew something inside our relationship had shifted. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly. Like a door closing without a sound. I did not ask him why. At my age, you learn that asking certain questions only makes people pull farther away. So I smiled through the phone. I answered his questions. I told him I was doing fine. And after we hung up, I sat in my kitchen chair and stared at the wall. I whispered the word to myself. Mom. It sounded smaller than it used to. 2 years is a long time not to hear your own child call you that. Especially when you once heard it every single day.
Set up.
My name is Margaret Ellis. I am 70 years old. I live alone in a small house on Maple Street. It's the same house where my son, Daniel, grew up. The paint is older now. The porch creaks a little more when I step outside. But the memories here are strong. Daniel was born in the middle of summer. The hospital room was warm. I remember holding him and thinking, you are my whole world now. His father passed away when Daniel was 10 at a sudden illness. It happened quickly. 1 week we were planning a camping trip. The next week I was signing papers I did not understand. After that it was just the two of us. I worked mornings at a grocery store. Evenings cleaning offices. Sometimes I came home so tired my feet felt like stone. But when Daniel ran toward me and said, Mom, all the tiredness would disappear. That word carried strength. It carried purpose. It carried love. I went to every school play, every parent meeting, every baseball game, even when I barely understood the rules. When he fell and scraped his knee, he came to me. When he was afraid of thunderstorms, he crawled into my bed. When he failed his first math test, he cried in my arms. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispered once. I kissed his forehead. You never have to apologize for trying, I told him. We were close. Very close. Maybe too close.
That is something I understand now.
When Daniel left for college, I stood in his empty bedroom and felt like someone had taken the air out of the house. He called me every Sunday, without fail. Hi, Mom, he would say. Sometimes just hearing that word made my whole week better. When he met Olivia, he called me right away. I met someone, he said, trying to sound casual. I smiled into the phone. Tell me about her.
She was kind, he said. Smart. Organized. Calm.
The first time I met her, she brought me flowers. She hugged me gently. It's so nice to finally meet you, Mrs. Ellis, she said. I corrected her right away. Please call me Margaret. She smiled. But Daniel still called me Mom back then. And that mattered. They married 2 years later. The wedding was beautiful, small church. White flowers. Soft music. When Daniel looked at Olivia at the altar, I saw a new kind of love in his eyes. A deeper one. A grown one. I told myself that was good. That was healthy. That was what I had raised him for. After the wedding, they moved to another town. Not too far. Just far enough that visits became planned instead of spontaneous. The phone calls became shorter. Busy week, Mom. Work's been crazy. I'll call you Sunday. Sometimes Sunday passed quietly. But I told myself that's life. Children grow up. They build new routines. Still, the first time he called me Margaret, something inside me tightened. It was during a small disagreement. I had suggested he visit more often. Just a gentle suggestion. There was a pause on the line. Then he said, Margaret, you have to understand. Margaret, not Mom. Not even a soft laugh before saying it. Just my name. Like I was someone else. Like I was outside the circle. I did not argue. I simply said, of course. But after that, he kept doing it. Every call. Every message. Margaret, are you feeling okay? Margaret, did you get the package? Each time, it felt like a small eraser was rubbing away something precious. I never corrected him. I didn't want to seem sensitive. I didn't want to seem needy. But in the quiet of my kitchen at night, I would sit with my tea and think about the first time he ever said, "Mom." He was barely 2 years old. He fell in the yard. Tiny hands covered in dirt, he looked up at me and cried, "Mommy." That sound was full of trust, full of belonging. Now, when he says Margaret, it feels polite, distant, careful. And I don't know when that distance began, or what I did to cause it. After Daniel started calling me Margaret, I told myself it was just a phase. Maybe Olivia preferred it. Maybe it sounded more grown-up. Maybe I was overthinking something small. But small things, when repeated often enough, begin to feel large. The next time I visited their home, I noticed something else. They introduced me differently. "This is Margaret," Olivia said to her friend at the door. Not, "This is Daniel's mom." Not, "This is my mother-in-law." Just Margaret. I smiled politely. I shook hands. But inside, I felt like a guest. Not family. Their house was modern. Clean lines. White walls. Very
Organized.
nothing like the warm clutter of Maple Street. I tried to stay out of the way. I folded the blanket after using it. I washed my coffee cup. I asked before turning on the television. Daniel seemed distracted most of the time. His phone buzzed often. "Work," he said. Olivia was always calm. Very calm. One evening, after dinner, I offered to wash the dishes. "I've got it," she said gently. "You're our guest."
Guest.
The word landed softly, but it stayed. Later that night, I heard them talking in their bedroom. The door wasn't fully closed. "I just think boundaries are important," Olivia said quietly. "I know," Daniel replied. "I love your mom, but I don't want to feel like we're still children." There was silence. Then Daniel's voice again. "She depends on me." Those words made my chest feel tight.
Depends on me.
I had worked 2 jobs. I had raised him alone. I had never asked him for money. Never asked him to fix my roof. Never asked him to move back home. All I wanted was conversation. But perhaps that felt like dependence to them. I lay awake that night on the guest bed, staring at the ceiling. I thought about all the times he used to ask me for advice, for comfort, for help. Now he saw my closeness as something heavy, something that needed boundaries. The next morning, Daniel drove me back home. The ride was quiet. Halfway there, I asked softly, "Did I do something wrong?" He kept his eyes on the road.
No.
"Then why do you call me Margaret now?" There it was. The question I had held for months.
He sighed.
"It's just healthier." Healthier. For who? I asked gently. "For everyone," he answered. He didn't explain further. And I didn't push. But something inside me shifted again. Healthier meant distance. Healthier meant space. Healthier meant I was too close before. When he dropped me off, he hugged me quickly. "Take care, Margaret." I nodded. "You too." I watched his car disappear down the street. And for the first time, I did not feel like crying. I felt confused. Weeks passed. Phone calls became less frequent. When he did call, the conversations felt careful. Surface level. "How's the weather there? Did you see the news? Are you eating well?"
No deep talks. No laughter.
No, remember when? Just polite check-ins. One afternoon, I tried something different. When he called and said, "Hi, Margaret," I responded softly, "You can call me Mom, you know." There was a pause. A long one. "I know," he said quietly. But he didn't. Instead, he changed the subject. After that, I never mentioned it again. A month later, I received a letter. Not from Daniel. From Olivia. It was polite.
Careful.
She explained that they were trying to build independence in their marriage. That they loved me. That they hoped I understood. The word boundaries appeared again. I read it twice. Then I folded it neatly and placed it in my drawer. I did not feel anger. I felt replaced. Not by another woman exactly, but by a new version of him. A version that needed to step away from childhood. And maybe calling me Mom reminded him too much of who he used to be. One evening, sitting at my kitchen table, I pulled out old photo albums. There was Daniel at age 5. covered in mud, grinning at the camera. There he was at 12, holding a science fair ribbon. And there he was at 22. College graduation cap, tilted slightly. In every photo, I stood beside him. Not behind him. Not in front of him. Beside him. I wondered when I had moved to the background. The real change came on Thanksgiving. They invited me over. I baked a pie just like always. When I arrived, the house was full of Olivia's family. Her parents, her sister, her cousins. Laughter filled the rooms. I stood near the doorway for a moment, unsure where to step. Daniel hugged me. Glad you made it, Margaret. Again, Margaret. During dinner, Olivia's father raised
his glass.
to family, he said warmly. Everyone smiled. I smiled too. But when Daniel thanked everyone for coming, he said, Olivia and I are so grateful to have all of you here. All of you. I was included in the room, but not in the words. After dessert, I helped clear plates. Olivia touched my arm gently. You don't have to do that. It's okay, I replied. She hesitated. Daniel's been trying to grow, she said carefully. And sometimes that means stepping away from old roles. Old roles. Mother. Caregiver. First call. I nodded slowly. I understand. And maybe I did. But understanding something does not mean it doesn't hurt. That night, driving home alone, I realized something simple. My son had not stopped loving me. He had stopped needing me. And maybe, in his mind, calling me mom kept him small. So he chose my name instead. It was his way of building distance, his way of building adulthood. But I wasn't ready for that kind of distance. Not yet. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when everything finally broke. The sky was gray, the kind of gray that makes the house feel smaller. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of tea that had already gone cold. The house was quiet, too quiet. I had not heard from Daniel in 3 weeks. Not a call, not a message, not even a short, hope you're okay. I told myself he was busy. Work, life, marriage. Still, 3 weeks felt long. Longer than usual. I looked at my phone again. No missed calls. I don't know what came over me that afternoon. Maybe it was the rain. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the simple truth that I missed my son. So I picked up the phone and called him. It rang 4 times. Then voicemail. Hi, this is Daniel. Leave a message. His voice sounded distant, cheerful, professional. I waited for the beep. Hi, it's Mom. I paused. I almost corrected myself. It's Margaret. I finished softly. I swallowed. I just wanted to hear your voice. Call me when you can. I hung up and stared at the wall. It was the first time I had stopped myself from calling myself Mom. And it felt like I had erased something important. He didn't call back that day. Or the next. On the 3rd day, I received a text. Sorry, busy week. Everything okay?
Just that. No wotems.
No love you. No miss you. I typed, erased, typed again. Yes, everything's fine. Just thinking of you. He responded with a thumbs up emoji. That tiny yellow hand felt colder than silence. 2 weeks later, I found out something that made my heart sink. Not from Daniel. From my neighbor, Carol. She had been at the grocery store and ran into someone she knew from Daniel City. Oh, I heard you're becoming a grandmother, she said cheerfully. I blinked. A grandmother?
Yes.
Isn't Olivia expecting? The words hit me like a slow wave. I felt the ground tilt slightly. I smiled politely. I hadn't heard yet. Carol's smile faded.
Oh.
I finished my shopping quickly. I don't remember driving home. I just remember sitting in my car in the driveway. Hands still on the steering wheel. A baby. My son was going to have a baby. And he hadn't told me. Not his mother. Not the woman who held him the first time he cried. I did not cry right away. I just sat there, breathing slowly, trying to understand. That evening, I called him again. This time he answered.
Mate.
His voice sounded distracted. Daniel, I said softly. Is there something you'd like to tell me? Silence. Then a long exhale. I was going to tell you soon. You're going to have a baby, I said. Yes. His voice softened slightly. It's still early. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I'm happy for you. And I meant it. I truly did. But beneath the happiness was something sharp. Why didn't you tell me? I asked gently. Another pause. We just wanted some space, he said.
Space.
That word again. I'm your mother. I whispered before I could stop myself. There it was. Mother. The word hung between us. I know, he replied quietly. But things have changed. Changed. Yes, I said. They have. We didn't argue. We didn't shout. We simply sat in the silence of two different worlds. I have to go, he said finally. Okay. Take care, Margaret. The line went dead. And for the first time in 2 years, I allowed myself to cry. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet tears that fell onto the kitchen floor. The next week, I made a decision. I would not wait for invitations anymore. I would not wait for updates. I would go see my son. Not to confront. Not to accuse. Just to understand. I called ahead. I'll be in your area next weekend, I said calmly. There was hesitation.
Oh.
Okay. When I arrived, Olivia opened the door. She looked tired, but she smiled politely.
Come in, Margaret.
The house smelled different, like fresh paint. They had turned the spare room into a nursery. Soft yellow walls. A small crib. Tiny socks folded neatly in a basket. I stood in the doorway, holding my breath. It's beautiful, I said. Olivia nodded. We're excited. Daniel came up behind her. He looked nervous. I turned to him. You're going to be a father, I said softly. Yes. I stepped closer. You'll understand something soon. He frowned slightly. What? I touched the crib gently. When you hold that baby for the first time, you'll understand why it hurts.
His face changed.
Confusion. Then realization. I never meant to hurt you, he said quietly. I know, I replied. And I never meant to hold you back. Olivia shifted beside him. We just wanted to build our own family, she said carefully. I nodded. You should. I looked at both of them. But building something new doesn't mean erasing what came before. No one spoke. The house felt still. Even the air seemed to pause. Then Daniel said something that I will never forget. When I call you Mom, I feel like I'm still that little boy who needed you for everything. His voice trembled slightly, and I was afraid if I kept being that boy, I wouldn't become the man my family needs. There it was. Not rejection. Not cruelty.
Fear.
He thought stepping away from Mom would help him grow. He thought distance meant strength. I reached out and held his hand. You don't stop being a man because you have a mother, I said gently. And you don't stop being my son just because you're someone's husband or someone's father. His eyes filled with tears. I had not seen him cry in years. I didn't know how to balance both, he admitted. I know, I said. I didn't either when I was young. We stood there quietly. No anger and raised voices. Just truth. Raw and simple. For a moment, I thought he might say it. The word.
Mom.
But he didn't. Instead, he hugged me. A long, tight hug. The kind he used to give when he was small. And for that moment, it was enough. That night, I stayed in the guest room. The rain tapped gently against the window. I lay awake, thinking. Maybe the problem was not that he stopped calling me Mom. Maybe the problem was that I held onto the sound of it too tightly. Maybe motherhood is not in the word. Maybe it is in the quiet knowing, in the steady presence, in the love that does not demand, in the love that waits. Still, the ache remained, because words matter, names matter. And when a child changes the name he calls you, it feels like losing something invisible, but real, very real. The next morning, before I left, Daniel walked me to my car. He hesitated. Thank you for coming, he said. Of course. He opened his mouth slightly, closed it, then finally said, Drive safe. I smiled. I always do. I got into my car and looked at him standing there. My son, a grown man, soon to be a father. And for the first time in 2 years, I didn't feel replaced. I felt necessary in a different
way.
not as the center of his world, but as the root.
Roots are not seen.
They are not praised, but they hold everything steady. The call came at 2 in the morning. I was asleep in my small bedroom on Maple Street when the phone rang. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. The house was dark. The clock on my dresser glowed 2:07 a.m. The phone kept ringing. My heart began to pound. I reached for it with shaking hands. Hello. There was heavy breathing on the other end. Then his voice. Margaret. He sounded different. Not distant. Not distracted. Just overwhelmed. It's time, he said. She's in labor. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. Is she okay? I asked softly.
Yes.
We're at the hospital. There was a pause. I just wanted you to know. Wanted me to know. Not Carol. Not a neighbor.
Me.
Thank you for calling, I whispered. Another silence. Then he said something small.
But it meant everything.
I didn't know who else to call. My eyes filled with tears. Not loud tears. Just quiet ones that slid down slowly. I'm here, I said. I know, he replied, that I didn't drive there right away.
They hadn't asked me to.
And I didn't want to intrude. Instead, I made coffee. I sat at my kitchen table. The same table where I had cried weeks before. The rain had stopped. The night was still. I imagined Olivia in a hospital bed. Daniel pacing the floor. Fear and excitement mixing together. I remembered my own labor. The bright lights. The nurses' voices.
The pain.
And then the first cry. The moment they placed Daniel in my arms. How small he was. How fragile. How my whole world changed in one breath. I whispered a small prayer into the quiet room. Not for myself. For them, for strength. For patience. For love. Hours passed. The sky began to lighten. At 6:42 a.m., my phone buzzed again. It's a girl. That was the message. Two simple words. A girl. I smiled at the rising sun outside my window. Is she healthy? I typed.
Yes.
7 pounds. Perfect.
Perfect.
I stared at the word for a long time. Then another message came. Her name is Lily.
Lily. Soft.
Gentle.
Bright.
Just like the flowers that grow in early spring. I typed back. She's beautiful already. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, the message came. Would you like to come meet her? I closed my eyes. Took a slow breath. Yes, I wrote. I would. The hospital room smelled like soap and something faintly metallic. Machines hummed softly. Sunlight filtered through thin curtains. Olivia looked tired, but peaceful. Daniel stood beside the bed, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in pink. When he saw me, he didn't say Margaret. He didn't say anything at all. He just nodded gently. I stepped closer, slowly, carefully, as if approaching something sacred. Daniel looked down at the baby. She's so small, he whispered. Yes, I said softly. They always are. He hesitated. Then he held her out to me. My hands trembled as I took her. She was warm, warmer than I expected. Her little face was wrinkled. Her eyelids fluttered slightly. I looked at her, and something inside me opened again. Not the same as before. Not the strong, protective love of a young mother. But something steadier, quieter. A love that understood time. Daniel watched me carefully. She's your granddaughter, he said. Granddaughter. The word felt different, like a new chapter. I leaned closer to the baby. Hello, Lily, I whispered. Her tiny fingers curled slightly around mine. And in that moment I understood something. Motherhood does not end. It changes. It stretches. It grows into something wider. I looked up at Daniel, and I saw it in his face. The realization.
The weight.
The wonder. The fear. He finally understood. Not through arguments. Not through explanations.
But through holding his own child.
He swallowed hard. She cried, and I didn't know what to do, he admitted quietly. I smiled gently. You'll learn. He looked at me for a long moment. Then, softly, almost without thinking, he said, Mom, how did you do this alone? The room seemed to go still. The machines hummed. Olivia shifted slightly in the bed. But all I heard was that word.
Mom.
Not forced. Not discussed. Not corrected. Just natural. Like it had always been. My heart did not race. It did not explode. It simply softened. I didn't always know what I was doing, I answered honestly. I was scared most days. He looked down at Lily again. I'm scared now. I know, I said. That's how you know you care. He nodded slowly, and in his eyes, I saw not a man trying to push away his childhood, but a man who finally understood it. The weeks after Lily's birth were quiet but different. Daniel called more often. Not long conversations, but real ones. How did you calm me down when I wouldn't sleep? He asked one evening. What did I eat when I was this little? Is it normal to feel this tired? I answered each question gently. Not with pride. Not with I told you so. Just with calm. Sometimes he slipped and said Margaret. Old habits linger. But more often now he said Mom.
Softly.
Almost shyly. And each time I responded the same way.
Warm. Steady.
Never correcting. Never pointing it out. Because now I understood. The word had not disappeared. It had been waiting for him to grow into it again. One afternoon, I visited their house. Lily was asleep in her crib. The nursery walls were still soft yellow, but the room felt warmer. Lived in. Daniel stood beside me. She likes when I hum, he said quietly. I smiled. You used to like that too. He looked at me with surprise. I did. Yes. I paused. You don't remember? He shook his head. I reached over and adjusted Lily's blanket gently. That's okay, I said. I remember enough for both of us. He placed his hand on my shoulder. A small gesture, but full of meaning. I'm glad you're here, Mom. This time, the word didn't feel fragile. It felt solid, like it belonged again. There was no big apology, no dramatic speech, just small, steady changes. Invitations to dinner. Photos sent without me asking. Video calls where Lily's tiny face filled the screen. And sometimes, when Daniel was tired and unsure, he would say, Mom, can I ask you something? And I would always answer, of course. Because that is what mothers do. Even when they are called by their first name for a while. Even when distance stretches long. Even when silence hurts. Love does not vanish. It waits. Patiently. Now, when I sit at my kitchen table with my tea, the house doesn't feel quite so quiet. There are toys in the corner from Lily's last visit. A small pink sock somehow left behind. I keep it in a drawer. Not because I need proof, but because it reminds me. Life moves forward. Children grow. They step away. They build their own homes. And sometimes, in trying to stand tall, they forget the hands that held them steady. But life has a gentle way of bringing understanding. Not through force. Not through anger. But through experience. Through becoming a parent yourself. Through holding a tiny life. And realizing how much love it takes. It has been 6 months since Lily was born. 6 months since I stood in that quiet hospital room and heard my son say, Mom, again. I don't count how many times he says it now. I don't measure it. I don't hold my breath waiting for it. Because something inside me has changed too. I used to think that being called Mom was proof. Proof that I still mattered. Proof that I still belonged. Proof that I had not been replaced. But I understand now. Love is not proven by a word. It is shown in small ways. In phone calls at 2 a.m. In asking for advice. In trusting someone enough to admit you are scared. And Daniel is scared sometimes. He tells me when Lily won't sleep. When he feels overwhelmed. When he worries he is not doing enough. And every time he shares those fears, I hear something deeper than Mom. I hear connection. Real connection. Last Sunday, they came over for dinner. The house felt full again. Lily's soft cooing echoed down the hallway. Olivia helped me set the table. She has changed, too. Motherhood has softened her. There is a tired kindness in her eyes now. The kind that comes from loving something deeply. While Daniel held Lily in the living room, I watched them quietly from the kitchen.
He rocked her gently.
humming without realizing it. The same tune I used to hum to him. He didn't remember it,
But his body did.
love has memory, even when we forget. During dinner, Lily began to cry. Daniel picked her up quickly.
He looked at me.
Not confused. Not distant. Just searching. Mom, he said softly, is this normal? I smiled. Yes. It won't last forever. He nodded, and I saw something in his face. Respect. Not because I demanded it. Not because I reminded him of sacrifices. But because he finally understood what those sacrifices meant. Later that evening, after they left, I sat alone in my quiet living room. The dishes were washed. The lights were dim, the house was
Still.
but it no longer felt empty. I thought about the last 2 years. The silence. The distance. The way my name sounded strange in his mouth. Margaret. At first, I believed he was pushing me away. I believed I was losing him. But now I see something different. He was trying to become himself. And sometimes, in that process, children step away from the people who shaped them. Not because they stop loving them, but because they are trying to understand who they are without them. It is not rejection. It is growth. Painful growth. But growth all the same. If you are listening to my story and your child has grown distant, if they call less, visit less, share less, I want you to breathe.
Slowly.
Because love is not erased so easily. Sometimes it hides behind pride, behind fear, behind the need to feel independent. But love remembers. It always remembers. And one day, life may place them in the same position you once stood in, holding something fragile, feeling overwhelmed, wishing for guidance. And in that quiet moment, they may remember your voice, your patience, your steady presence. They may remember that someone once stayed up all night for them, that someone once worried over their fever, that someone once whispered prayers into the dark. And maybe, without planning it, they will say the word again. Mom, I no longer wait for it the way I used to. Because now I understand something deeper. Being a mother is not about what you are called. It is about who you are. It is about showing up, even when you feel forgotten. It is about loving without keeping score. It is about letting your child grow, even if growth creates distance for a while. Roots do not chase branches. They simply hold the ground steady. And branches, no matter how far they stretch, are always connected to the root. Always. Sometimes I sit on my porch in the evening. The sun setting softly over Maple Street. Children playing somewhere in the distance. I close my eyes and remember Daniel as a little boy running toward me with scraped knees. Mom, he would shout. Back then, the word came easily.
Carelessly.
He did not know how much it meant. Now, when he says it, it carries weight. Understanding. Experience. And maybe that makes it even more precious. But if one day he slips again and says, Margaret, I will not break. Because I know who I am. I am the woman who carried him. The woman who stayed. The woman who loved him through silence. Through distance. Through change. And love like that does not disappear. It only grows quieter. Stronger. Wiser. So, if your son hasn't called you mom in 2 years, or 3, or 10, do not let your heart harden. Do not let pride build walls.
Keep your door open.
Keep your voice gentle. Keep your love steady. Because motherhood is not a title that can be taken away. It is a bond written into time. And time, if we are patient, has a way of bringing understanding back home. I am no longer afraid of silence. I am no longer afraid of change. Because now, when my phone rings late at night and I hear his voice say, Mom, can I ask you something? I don't hear distance anymore. I hear trust. And that is enough. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, hold your child a little closer today. And if they are far away, hold them gently in your thoughts. Love does not need to be loud to be real. Sometimes it only needs to be patient. And sometimes that patience brings the word back home.